It's a first-person single-player game. You don't necessarily need that 60 frames. I hope to God that wasn't actually the sentence they used. I feel like this is another reminiscence of... do you guys not have phones? Avowed will run at a baseline of 30 frames per second across the X and S. As confirmed. Speaking on the podcast, art director Matt Hansen said Obsidian is targeting a base... Bro, you don't need to repeat the same sentence 3 times. 60 FPS sounds unlikely, however, even on the more powerful Series X. Explaining, said decided to go for 30 FPS in order to facilitate fancier visuals, and that because Avowed is a first-person single-player game, you don't necessarily need that 60 frames. Is that an actual thing? Is that a reasoning? No, it can't be. We are targeting 30 frames per second bare minimum, Hansen said. That's the expectation. It's a first-person single-player game. You don't have to repeat so many things on the article just to get that fucking... Gonna shit on the article again for being so much copy-paste, man. You could have probably put everything on here. People would have appreciated you for writing everything short. Like, we've come to a point where I'm just asking on Reddit that too long did not read, because generally information can be written in so many short sentences and not across... Oh my god, there's a lot. Okay. I love reading, by the way. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my hobbies, but you gotta make it fun for me to read. It's a first person, and that allows us to get a lot of juicier with VFX and lighting and all this other stuff. It's a trade-off we opted to make relatively early, and we're really happy with that. The game's running pretty smooth for how visually dense it is, and that was always our goal. Obsidian is still figuring out the nitty-gritty of performance. It's one of the last things you do, Hansen said. It's out in February. Joins a list of games that now have a patch update. Obsidian's reasoning for targeting 30 FPS echoes comments made by Bethesda development chief Todd Howard in explaining why last year's Starfield launched at 30 FPS on both X and S. I think it'll come as no surprise given our previous games what we go for. Always these huge open worlds, fully dynamic, hyper detail where anything can happen, and we do... Well, the point of Starfield is that not a lot of things happened. We do want to do that. It's 4K in the X, 4040 on the S. We do lock it at 30 because we want that fidelity. We want all that stuff. We don't want to sacrifice any of it. Yeah, but just give the players the choice. Why lock it on a certain amount of frames just because you want to have everyone experience what you're envisioning? And that's... Look, it's fine to show the fidelity. People will play at 4K, 30 FPS. They'll do that. I personally wouldn't, because I don't care much about that. I appreciate fluidity of my games way more than I do to see it in 4K. I don't need it. And this is because that's the choice I am making. If you remove choices for gamers, for players to... It's just going to make them harder to just give them a reason to purchase whatever you want to sell. Fortunately, in this one, we've got it running great. It's often running way above that. Sometimes it's the 60. But on the consoles, we do lock it because we prefer the consistency where you're not even thinking about it. I'll be honest, though, on another point of view, a lot of casual players do not notice it. I've had a lot of people back when Jedi Survivor came out for Star Wars. I played it on console and I played it on PC. They were both horrendous. I couldn't deal with it because I'm used to that fluidity of, in my case, 165 hertz. The average player doesn't actually notice it because, like I mentioned at the start, a lot of people couldn't understand the complaints that were being made for the PlayStation version of Jedi Survivor, and I played it on PlayStation, and I fully understood why. In the sense of, like, I can understand why it was running shit for me, but I can also understand why other people didn't notice it as much. It's because probably they are used to that console, to games not always running perfectly. They're not used to games being too smooth. They'll even be impressed. If anything, it's very normal. When people go from 1080p monitors to 4K, they don't want to go back. People go from 30 frames to 60, they don't want to go back. When people go from 60 to 144, they don't want to go back. You don't realize what you're missing until you try it out for yourself. And so it took me like a good amount of years before I decided to go for a higher frame rate than 60. And that's when I realized that for me, 60 feels too slow. And 30 is another story. But for some people that have only been used to performance 60 FPS or quality 30 FPS, they don't care much about it. If anything, I feel like most people Because the casual players, they take the majority of the percentage of players that are playing a certain game. I'm sure they don't even know about the settings, and it's probably set to quality automatically. Or I have friends that don't have the same mindset of me as me, and that's fine. And they talk about, for me, everything in 4K is just better quality. They don't understand the whole 30 and 60 FPS thing. I even had to explain this to my boss at work one time, the difference between 30 and 60 FPS, because he just didn't understand it himself. He couldn't realize the monitors he was using was 60 FPS. He doesn't understand what, like, you could try and explain it to the casual majority, but most of them just either won't care, or they just won't understand, or they do understand and they try it out, but that's just a very minority. So in some sense, I can understand the whole way you're not even thinking about it, because there are quite a lot of players that just don't care that much. But I do. I do. And I don't care about the 4K. Really. I don't... If anything, I just don't notice the difference between quality and performance when it comes to what I'm seeing on the screen. But I do notice the fluidity of my game. We're really happy how it feels even in the heat of battle, and we need that headroom because in our games really anything can happen. As was the case with recent expo, Avowed may end up with a 60 FPS performance mode post-launch. The thing is though, I'm sure Avowed will be a game with, obviously it mentioned a lot of endings and there's a lot of options, but I just don't feel like a lot of people will go back to a certain game because it has a patch update for 60 FPS. At least it's just not a good thing to sell later on anyways. I feel like it's just damaging the reputation, because most people will just ask the question as to why did you not do this any sooner? I've already, 100%ed your game. There's no point in me playing this now on 60 FPS, and other people that are going to play the game new, they're going to enjoy it in superior mode. That sort of sentiment, it's just very jarring to experience that sort of thing. And I feel like for something to still not have the option to put it on 60 FPS and lowering a couple of the high fidelity or visual things, so that you can just play this amount of frames. The fact that that is not an option in some games is, in this day and age, it's ridiculous, man. This shouldn't be a thing. And it's just, I'm probably gonna play it on PC, but fuck me, man. I just feel bad. Like, people really don't understand what they're missing out, but it's obviously not my problem. I just wanted to talk about this purely because of this. It's a first-person single-player game. You don't necessarily need that 60 frames. Yes, you do, because it's a fucking choice. People choose to go for the 60 frames. Don't make the choice for the players. You're just making it harder for them to want to purchase your game if you're selling it like this. Or don't say something like that. Word it differently. This comes off as very hostile, because you kind of I feel like it's kind of a jab at people that really want it. You don't necessarily need the 60 FPS. It's not needed, and you're just there thinking like, why are you saying this to me? It just feels so, like, I don't know, it just feels like it's not an attack, but I feel like they're calling out some group. At least that's how I feel about it. Yeah, I don't know. I find the reasoning for locking at 30 just stupid. That's all. They even mentioned the game is able to sometimes hit the 60 frames, and I'm gonna assume that's with the high fidelity they're talking about. They're not talking about a performance mode. So I'm just there thinking, if you're able to hit 60 FPS, except for some heavy hard-hitting areas where it probably goes to 45, reduce a couple things in the background that is not needed to make it hit that 60 FPS. It should be doable. It's 2024, man. I'm no developer, but come on. Put some backbone into it, man. Do your job. Yeah, but this, I'm just gonna leave it here, man. I find this whole thing ridiculous. I just dislike the whole not giving us the choice. I feel like that should not be done. But that's my opinion. I'm gonna leave it here, though. I want to thank you all for watching. It's been an absolute pleasure. And I'll see you all in the next episode. Next video. I'm so used to Let's Plays. Anyways. Bro, my brain is all fucking... It's brain dead, man. This whole article has absolutely ruined my brain cells because nothing here makes sense. But anyways. Take care and peace.